Okay, it is 9:30 p.m. or so on Saturday night, and I am recording this. My family and I have been isolating at home all week, and it is a busy and a noisy place, and so I am trying to get some quiet and some stillness. And friends, I would like to invite you to some stillness and to some silence and to listening in prayer. We actually did some of the listening work last week as we imaginatively prayed our way through Jesus' words about him being the good shepherd. If you didn't get a chance to do that, maybe you can make your way back to last week's service and do that reflection. The ideas of silence and listening in prayer, they're sometimes a little tricky for us. Silent, why? Like, what is it that we're supposed to do with all that's going on in our lives or in the world? Do we have time to be silent and listen? What are we listening for? What are we supposed to be hearing? Those are all good questions. And I don't know if I have any perfect answers for you. But I will say that silence is a way that God speaks. Maybe you know the story of Elijah on the mountain in 1 Kings. Elijah is waiting for God to come by. He sits in the rocks, and there's this huge wind that comes and splits stones, but God isn't in the wind. And then comes an earthquake, and it rumbles and roars, but God isn't in the earthquake. And then there's a blazing fire. I'm sure a lot more impressive than this little vegetable sweepings log. But God is also not in the fire. And it isn't until the sound of sheer silence that Elijah heard what he was looking for, the presence of God, and then he went on to hear from God. He heard the silence, and then he had his meeting with God. We tend to think of silence as like an absence of noise, an absence of clatter, an absence of sound. But silence in the mind of Scripture is actually not so much an absence as it is the manifestation of a presence. One writer said that silence is God's first language and everything else is a poor translation. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence. That Hebrew word silent in that verse actually sounds like and means hush. The whole earth falls into a hush before God. So let's take a few minutes to do this. Below the video, there's some instructions for listening. First, you're invited to this practice that's sometimes known as centering prayer. It's a way of cultivating stillness in our minds and our hearts and our souls and our bodies. It's like a coming into quiet in the presence of God and entering into God's language. You don't need anything to do it, just a comfortable place to sit and a little time. Second, there's instructions for some listening in that silence. In this case, listening through hearing God in our own lives. Listening for God in our emotions, our experiences, our encounters with other people, noticing what God has to say about the ups and downs that we've been going through over the last week, and paying attention to any sort of invitation that God might be giving you. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent. Or as it says in the Message, God is in his holy temple. Quiet, everyone. A holy silence. Listen.